Anywhere you find two people talking about 3D printing, I guarantee there is a third desperately elbowing into the conversation. Either their first layer sucks, their print keeps falling off the bed, or their walls have little lines in them. That's why today, I am going to answer what you're not asking. Ladies, gentlemen, and cyborgs, here are 5 3D printing mistakes that are so common, yet so insidious. You're probably making one right now and don't even realize it. Welcome to my workshop, which I call Void Star Lab. This episode is sponsored by the brand new AnkerMake M5C, a filament-flinging monster with mesh leveling, a textured magnetic plate, and a handsome aluminum chassis. It isn't just gimmicks and looks. The M5C's all-metal hot end lays down almost any material up to 500 millimeters a second. You get all this for just $400. That is preposterous. After 3 minutes of assembly, you're ready to print faster and sharper than competitors triple the price. Plus, this thing actually looks like the Star Trek future a 3D printer actually is. AnkerMake even includes a fully loaded toolbox. There is a catch, and I will explain it in rhyme. This mean, clean, somewhat green machine keeps the price lean by ditching the screen. Everything from loading filament to starting a job all happens in the AnkerMake app. If you have an old phone or tablet lying around, you can even use it as a dedicated controller. Perhaps print a stand for it on your new M5C. Maybe even stick it on the M5C with a special Gridfinity mount printed on that very M5C. Just don't get too carried away, that's mistake number 2, we'll get there. Click the link in the didgeridoo to get your own AnkerMake M5C for $40 off. I sincerely believe this makes a great first printer, and the speed and quality make it a pretty good second printer too. Just don't get too attached to that packed-in toolbox, because mistake number 1 is failing to upgrade your gear. When you start out in any hobby, printing or otherwise, I always recommend you resist the urge to go on a shopping spree. Take the tools you already own and supplement them with bargain bins like Harbor Freight to just get a cheap disposable starter kit. Once you finish a few projects and you know you're hooked, then you can start swapping your gear for the high quality tools to last a lifetime. The mistake happens when you never actually do the second part and continue using sketchy gear long after you've outgrown it. I just want to be clear, if money's an issue, this does not apply to you. No hobby is worth spending your last dollar. But if you've been printing for years and you can afford proper tools, you might not even realize what you're sacrificing. Case in point, the deburring tool. This is a little curved blade on a swiveling handle, and it is the absolute best way to trim off brims and elephant's foot. It does this really common job faster than any kind of knife, and it does it better. Plus, when the blade jumps loose and cuts your hand, you're much less likely to end up in the hospital. Listen, fellas, lady fellas, NB fellas, plural fella systems, if you clean up your prints with a knife, sooner or later, you will have a medical emergency. Get a deburring tool. Our next upgrade is also for safety, but this time it'll protect your printer from yourself. If you regularly 3D print, that means you regularly maintain a 3D printer, and that means you need some precision German engineering. Whereas hex plus wrenches kinda cost a fortune, but their killer feature will save your bacon sooner or later on every single 3D printer. These are hexagonal Allen keys, the kind used for like every fastener on every printer. The difference is the flat sides of the hexagon gently slope inwards. This concentrates force in the corners of the socket, so if a fastener seizes and you have to put a little grunt into it, you won't ream it out. Extracting a stripped socket head screw is such a titanic pain in the ass, you'll often end up just tossing out the whole assembly. The other end has an omnidirectional ball head, which lets you attack your target from any angle. Designers often get a little creative with the hardware placement. Not me though, other people. Also consider Wera's HF set, which trades the ball for a tiny spring-loaded screw holder. With this thing, navigating a screw deep into a printer is so easy, you'll forget how unspeakably obnoxious it is to field strip an extruder and clear a jam without it. Just be aware only the 3mm and up have this feature. And I'm not telling you to shell out for both sets, you dink. Pick the one you think you'll use more often, you dink. Big dink energy today. Speaking of filament jams, you can buy acupuncture needles to clear them out, though I've never actually seen one of these work. Instead, I recommend an extruder declogging tool. This is a steel rod on a handle that's about as thin as your standard 1.75mm filament. You release the idler, heat up the extruder, and just shove the thing into the thing. Whoa, Black Betty, ram the jam. This works so much better because very few blockages are actually in the nozzle. Even if Eastern medicine could uncork your clog, the filament is just going to shove it right back in. The last tool I want you to see is this palette knife, as I throw it in the trash. Folks use these to pry prints off the build plate, and every time you gouge up your plastic sheet with a steel blade, a puppy cries its first tear. This is what you want, a plastic razor blade. The edge is thin enough to get under the print, but the material is too soft to attack the print surface. Just a heads up, these wear out almost immediately, so buy them in bulk. And before you tree-licking hippies chew me out in the comments, this is not a tool you should be using very often. If you're having a hard time getting your prints off the build plate, that's not normal. You're doing something wrong. Maybe your Z offset is set too low, or your TikTok rotted brain attention span having ass needs to start waiting for the bed to cool down before you try to get the print off of it. It might even be time to upgrade your print surface. I like Wham Bam's PEX plates. I've been trying to shout them out for like 3 years. These things are awesome. Everything sticks to it. The only downside is you can't print PETG on it. I mean, you can print PETG on a Wham Bam PEX plate once. Just don't go mad with power, or you'll fall into mistake number 2, forgetting the project. Between maintenance, upgrades, and just printing a lot of boats, you can get so fixated on the printer, you forget to make projects. In a past episode, I said printers print prints for printers when printers should print prints for printers projects. This is the rest of the rant. I want to be clear, 3D printing is a great hobby in its own right. Plenty of folks get drawn into printing by making like cosplay props, and then discover they enjoy printing more than playing dress up as somebody else's OC. That's not this mistake. If you intentionally switch from printing projects to printer projects, more power to you. But if you're telling your friends, your family, and yourself that your printer is just a tool, yet your ratio of printer tinkering to project finishing threatens to divide by 0, you, my cyber brother and Catboy Christ, have a problem. If you abandon your goals but don't admit it, in other words, you lie to avoid doing things you want to do, the same habits keeping your projects in pieces might be dragging down the rest of your life with it. I should know, I was and still kind of am a giant slacker. It was only after I developed the mindset to finish projects that I could start crafting a marriage, job, and other grown-up milestones I never really thought were open to me. Printer people are particularly prone to a pseudo-productive procrastination pattern called bike shedding. Every project has steps that suck. Maybe you hate struggling to turn your sketch into a CAD model. Maybe you dread testing your build and discovering what you did wrong. If there is another task available to do, it's tempting to do the fun one first. But eventually all the good stuff is checked off and all that remains are the crappy dregs you've been avoiding. This is where most people sigh and say, fine, I'll do it. But others make new fun tasks up. This is bike shedding, fixating on details to an unnecessary degree to avoid doing work you aren't interested in doing. The name comes from a committee who was supposed to plan a nuclear power plant, but wasted months fixating on the minutia of its storage shed for storing bikes. A while ago, I did an episode on cursed filaments. Each one turned out uniquely frustrating in its own special way. So instead of sucking it up and slogging through, I let myself pour way too much time into upgrading the printer itself. Sure, I needed it for the video, and it now looks pretty frickin' slick, but were light bars and a touch screen worth making you wait weeks to watch my work? Of course it wasn't. On a subconscious level, I knew if I admitted enough is enough, I would have no excuse but to dive right into that bottomless vat of shit work. The danger of printing is there's always something you can do to your printer, and it can always be justified. The mistake is doing it now instead of after you wrap up your current project. But is the printer itself your project, or is it what you're doing to avoid your project? Make no mistake, bike shedding is work, and that work could be worth doing. But if it doesn't move your project forward, it's procrastination. Our mental image of procrastination is lazy fun, so printer upgrades and other pragmatic tasks somehow seem better. But the result is all that counts. Whether you spend your weekend assembling a new Voron or grinding Valorant till 4 AM as you rip a blunt so plump it makes my hog look like a lockpick, if your projects aren't ending, you are wasting your time. Don't give yourself time to come up with excuses. Immediately jump directly into the scariest thing on the list. You know what else you need to finish? Your filament. A lot of makers don't realize that pretty much all filaments have an expiration date, and with each passing day, you scooch closer to mistake number 3. Content warning, I'm about to say the M word a lot. If you are bothered by the M word, then prepare to be bothered, because mistake number 3 is allowing your filament to become moist. I have a ton of filament. A lot of it is from my quest to try them all. Some others are from feature designs that need specific colors. A few were just sent unsolicited by manufacturers hoping for free product placement. You win this round, corporate interests. But this is my job. You do not need this much material. Tempting as it is to collect the whole set, you should only crack open a spool if you know you'll finish it within a couple of years. By the way, how do you bust open those bags? Are you a tab-tearing technician or a bag-stabbing barbarian? Declare your allegiance in the comments. No matter how you break the seal, the instant filament hits air and the air has more than 20% ambient humidity, it'll grow increasingly moist. Nearly all polymers absorb moisture, so moist filament is an incredibly common issue. But the symptoms almost always get blamed on the printer or even the user, and nobody on the 3D printing subreddit will ever suggest it. Here's what to look for. Water captures a ton of heat, so even lightly moist filament means blobby details, saggy overhangs, and the telltale symptom, wisps and stringing. As the polymer grows moister, water literally boils off in the hot end. Tiny bubbles pop up in the molten filament, prints come out rough and weak, and a dribble of foamy plastic oozes out while idling. As the filament saturates, it becomes increasingly brittle. It clogs the hot end, and it eventually ends up literally unprintable. At this stage, you can still rejuvenate the filament by chucking it in a dehydrator. These circulate warm, dry air that evaporates the moisture and blows it out before it can just reabsorb. I want to be clear, this is a dehydrator, not a dry box. A dry box will slow the moistening process, but it can't drive existing moisture out. Sunlu sent me their new Filodryer S4, which is sort of both. It recovers, protects, and dispenses 4 reels with a heater, fan, and a desiccant compartment. I don't actually think there are any other filament dehydrators that can handle 4 reels at once. It's pretty neat. You can modify a food dehydrator to do the job, but a specialized dryer circulates more air through the filament, so you're ready to print sooner. It's also nice to have the times and temperatures preset, especially if you didn't buy your wife a label maker. Sunlu just put the Filodryer S4 on Kickstarter, and if you're quick, the first 300 units are just 80 bucks. But no matter what you put it in, every single coil will eventually pass a moist vent horizon. Water isn't just getting trapped inside the polymer, it's chemically reacting with it in a process called hydrolysis. This irreversibly chemically alters the filament, eventually destroying the entire reel. This is what it looks like on PLA and ABS. No matter how long these sit in the dehydrator, the filament and its prints just crumble. Once your spool starts spontaneously splintering, it's too late. You have reached critical moist. Take the L, chuck it in the trash, and before you buy another, remember to make the most of what you got. Luckily, you can spot this problem happening right away. If the first layer looks streaky and flaky, or if you're hearing crackling, or if lines peel off the plate, just cancel the print, it'll only get worse. But suppose you were to just hit go and skedaddle to make me a sandwich. A minor mess becomes a major meltdown when you make mistake number 4, abandoning your print. Also, remember to go to my channel's About page to find our P.O. Box address for you to send all sandwiches. As a rule, you should keep an eye on every single job till at least the first 3 layers are down. Not only is this the most failure-prone part of the process, these bottom layers are the platform that literally carries the rest of the job. The first layer should be consistently flat and a tiny bit shiny with no divots, gaps, or breaks. If it doesn't look right, adjust your Z offset or baby stepping or twiddle the knobs on the underside. You really should have mesh leveling by now though. After the first 3 or 4 layers, kneel down and look for curling. Even a tiny corner peeling a tiny bit means the print is doomed. Even if it does succeed, it's gonna be shaped like a taco. Past this point, Past this point, most jobs will succeed, though if your print is tall, narrow, or wide, it is much more likely to collapse into an all-out spaghetticalism. I bought myself a fancy motorized security camera to keep an eye on all 7 machines in my print room, but if you made better life choices than me and only have a single printer, you should consider a purpose-built print cam like this Beagle V2. We featured this thing's predecessor in one of the old Gridfinity episodes, and its manufacturer Minchin gave me the new improved version to show you here. The advantage of print cam has over a security cam is if you see things going pear-shaped, you can remotely pause the job on the spot from the same interface. Hey kids, Zack from the future here. Turns out AnkerMake put their USB ports in host mode so they can read flash drives instead of the usual peripheral mode to accept commands. In other words, the M5C is one of the very few printers that cannot be controlled by, for instance, a print cam. For instance, the Beagle V2. Fuck me, right? Print cams can also stabilize time lapses. The model doesn't jerk around because the Beagle takes command of the printer and sets the bed to the same position each frame. You can do all this for free using Octoprint and the Octolapse extension, assuming you already have a Raspberry Pi and a fancy pants camera, which together do cost more than bike shedding. I'm doing it right now. Whether you use a camera or your own eyeballs, it's a good idea to check in on your print every hour or so. Best case scenario, the print finished and you just forgot to collect it and start another. Worst case, the print failed and filament is now blocking the nozzle. If you catch this early, you can just pluck it off with tweezers and start your print over. If you don't, a colossal wad of half-molten filament will creep up the hot end and envelop the extruder, warping cooling ducts, encrusting metal, and destroying wires. If this is allowed to cool, it's probably a death sentence for at least part of your extruder. A 3D printer is a manipulative bastard that will lull you into a false sense of security before burying your hopes and dreams beneath an elephantine clog of congealed polymer. But I also want you to ask yourself, of all your prints that fail, how many of them are your own design? Because if the answer is most of them, you're probably committing our final and most damning mistake. Number 5, failing to design for printing. I make a lot of original models, and when I print projects I plan to use, I print them in PETG. Compared to PLA, this material is stronger and easier to touch up, but it's a bit more finicky to print. Supports fuse with overhangs, bridges like to sag, and sharp edges curl off the plate. My solution? I don't design models with overhangs and sharp edges. Virtually all my designs are multiple pieces with rounded corners, and this is not for aesthetics. I strategically split my models to eliminate the need for supports, and while a brim can keep sharp corners nailed down, why waste time trimming a brim, the old brim trim, if you don't even need it in the first place? I designed my Optigon belt pack in, I think, 6 parts, each oriented to print at the necessary strength as fast as possible, no supports needed. Not only does this save time and boost strength, if it's multiple models, I can run multiple jobs at once and speed the process up. Plus, if any of the prints fail, it doesn't trash the whole shebang. While you're at it, model in a shadow line and alignment pegs, because these will prevent a seam from forming. You don't have to sand down a seam if you don't make it in the first place. Does your print have text? Well, don't slow the whole print down to make it crisp. Print the text on a separate nameplate and just glue it there. Here's a fun one. We mentioned earlier that tall prints tend to fail, so if you model in some sacrificial braces, you can hold it steady. Delightful 3D printer nerd and Voidstar Discord mod Billy Rubin prepared a rather nice cheat sheet that I have linked down under, because she's Australian. The moral of the story is don't solve problems in your printer if you can prevent them in your model, and don't finesse your model if you can alter the design itself. So what makes this mistake the worst mistake? Well, let's recap. If you use sketchy tools, you make your life harder. If you lose focus on the project, you waste your life. If your filament grows moist, your prints will fail. If you walk away, your printer could fail. But this mistake goes into your models, and your models go onto the internet. Then I download your models, and I gotta waste hours carving off supports and brims and dealing with failed prints because you didn't fill it your goddamn corners. After all I've done for you, you dump your laziness on my doorstep? F you, golly. And that's 5 mistakes you might not even know you're making. I hope something here has helped you become a better printer. If you'd like to buy a better printer, check out the AnkerMake M5C, link and discount in the description. Thank you to AnkerMake, Sunlu, and Minchin for sponsoring this episode, and if you're interested in any of the tools or models I featured today, you'll find all the links. I forget. Even if you don't end up buying, using an Amazon link lets me snatch 5% of your next order right out of Jeff Bezos' wallet. If you're looking for a place to ask about or get asked about bed adhesion, clog nozzles, and layer lines, check out the Voidstar Lab Discord. Volunteer 3D printing helpers are on call, and every member is friendly and welcoming, or else. To support the channel directly and bug me in the secret lab, chip in at patreon.com/Zack Freedman. Each month, I shout out 3 lab scientist supporters, and the lucky ducks paying these bills, get it, Arch Leaky, Binary Construct, and ATD. Super special thanks to our collaborators, E to the I Pi, What the Chuck, Bitrot, Dysfunctional Potato, The Suits Ruined Our Fun, Turner, Zay, SXP, Castor the Catboy, The Benevolent Misanthrope, Schleppy the Schwagster, and Moonkin. Their over-the-top generosity has earned them a permanent place in the Voidstar Print Lab and an Easter egg somewhere in this video. Can you find it? If you have a project to work on, your answer is no. But while you hack, have a hearty chuckle at our lab assistant supporters and their community guidelines straining noms de plume. These lovable rapscallions include a Zondo wielder of Iron Heater of Shrink, Iron Rain, Talon Democratic Socialist, and a pretty righteous dude Zack, Adam Birch. Visit oma3dprints.com for all your 3D printed RPG product needs. VPS Data, Quality Doggo, Sunburnt Cat, Acorn, shameless plug for the Gaguino Espresso Project, Lydia K, Microwave, Trans Rights, Ortnus Nyerb, 6A, 6F, 6.5, 6E75, Good Lady Nat, Queen of Lemons, Victor of the Great Citrus Wars, Dax Dastardly, Seek Seth Checks, Aaron Han Lykulo, Protagonist, Paul Gibbs, Viwatch, Danny Devoid of Life, Trump did nothing wrong, Anthony Evans, Matthew Arrington, Pussy Nugget, Nova Ren, Callsign Carrot, in bed. Incognito, John Loves Jen Rinry, Bootsy von Bopstein, Ryan Gooler, Quantumly Tingled, Granville Schmidt, Kermit the OG Frog. My husband watches, and now I am too, so hi to me and Urch. The Lizards are watching Zack. Bob Dobbington, Period Clot Stormy Design, Elite Giant Blammo, Thunder Chicken, SKL Cardamon, Not a Digimon, Rusty Flute. I inspired the Next Layer's YouTube channel, so you guys should check that out. Aaron Steers, Kirsty Wales, Harbinger of the Hamster Harvest, Hallowed Hand of Hades, RJ Dipcord, Martin Titonium, Zach Harvey, Sticks Like the River Not the Band, Measure Once, Cut Twice, Reglue, Cut Again, Eddie, The Cuttlefish, Vagelli, Michael, Doom Crew Inc., Dr. Mrs. the Merman. Cross-threading is just free Loctite. I hate that name every time I read it even more. Samuel Roosh, Powerful CCH, but seriously, ladies, gentlemen, cyborgs, every name I read out loud is fake. Seriously, on with the real subscribers. Scroto Sagan, Circle Zero, Burnett, Michael Roche, Cody, Bob Forbes, Miranda, Steven 6 foot 6 figure 6-pack Schulte, Bryn 6 foot 5 figure Forlorn, Wolf Schulte, Good Suck, Cullen J. Webb wonders if vampires like the taste of pennies. Abraham Lincoln was a vampire. Do your own research. Bill Schooler, Boulder Creek Era, James, my dog is a bear. Kevin DeGraff, Max Luck says you're too hard on yourself. Love yourself, idiot. VK2KTJ, Varka, One Sleep, Jamie, Jason, Cacophony of Failure, Travis Hippa, probably not 3 raccoons in a trench coat, Zach but spelled wrong, Dempsors, DBD, General Buck Turgidson, Nuclear 314, Noah B. Johnson, even Bluetooth has a right to repair, Brad Cox, Jessica Mowerhand, Socks McGox, Craft Computing, Creamy McCream's Creamiest Creme Crematory, Cindy Lauman, Burrenduck 3, The Monk, Bum Tickly 69, Big Bird Tommy, What Goes Bump in the Night, Agent Maxwell, Roger Pigman of the Great Star Theater, Cameron Ogletree, 603, Amanishi, Dennis Kempen, Cliff Henning, Topher, King Shaming Walrus, Spire, I slayed that patron, Mike Kelly, Zanforian, Micah Bobika, Banana Fanafo, Fika, Fee-Fi-Fo, Freedman, Haley Kerman, Juicy Legend, Drinker of Juicy Legendary Fruits, Tegan at Let's Fly Tail Wheels, H-Cheese for the Homeless, Zap, Onyx Plague, The Antifa, Nathan Johnson, and Mulan Splooge. They paid $20 to make me say that. Thanks for watching, and may the only spaghetti you find on your plate be sprinkled with parsley. I'll see you in the future.